This is TWiT.
Okay, so ROCA. We're beginning to see some specifics of fallout from the decade-plus use of very badly, poorly generated public keys by this broken embedded library. And there was something that teased me that I just didn't run down, but there was some suggestion that a shortcut was made in the algorithm where they had some collection, it was described as a structure of primes that were built in. And it's like, okay, it's hard for me to understand how that couldn't be really bad. So it must be different than I'm thinking. I mean,
you don't want to use fixed existing well-known numbers as part of your factoring. That would be that would foolish. that
would not survive well. So we've learned a few things. First of all, Infineon, of course, within the industry is a well-known company. They're the guys that had certainly the best of intentions, but they produced this defective library, which Gemalto, which is a major smart card and security access OEM, was using. They have a card which began selling in 2004, which is called the IDPrime.net card. They won't disclose, because now they're embarrassed, how many they've shipped. But it's believed to be as many as hundreds of millions. So hundreds of millions of individual Gemalto smart cards based on the broken Infineon library are not secure. Now, it's probably not a coincidence that this card was discontinued at the end of last month. Just this last month, 4 weeks ago, at the end of September. Okay, we're done. However, the problem is they're the manufacturer. There are still third-party distributors with inventory still selling them. In Ars Technica's reporting, they contacted a Gemalto representative who referred them to a company advisory which read, quote, "Our investigation has determined that end-of-sale IDPrime.net products may be affected." That's okay, right?
What a coincidence. What a shock.
Yeah, we're not selling those anymore.
You don't want those.
Good thing you didn't ask us last week. But now we're not selling them anymore.
Really want those.
Meanwhile, cryptography experts who are curious, I mean, now you can imagine in the wake of this revelation from Monday before last, the industry is trying to understand what this means in practical terms. So cryptography experts who are now aware of this have been poking around. And they've added that there is little doubt of Gemalto's cards being affected. The CEO of Enigma Bridge, that is a security company, said he had examined 11 of Gemalto's IDPrime.net cards issued from 2008 through earlier this year. All of them used an underlying public key that tested positive for the crippling weakness. So you could extrapolate that to hundreds of millions. So essentially, what we have is an incredibly widespread, difficult to remediate vulnerability. And this is the danger imposed by the use of widespread and defective consumer crypto. The problem is everybody's got these. There's hundreds of millions of them in people's wallets or pockets. And how do you deal with that? I think it's going to probably be up to individual companies to decide how they want to handle this, what they want to do. If they've got Gemalto products, they probably need to say, okay, how do we fix this? We need safe keys. And these are embedded in inexpensive cards, so they're not flash reprogrammable. They're dumpster discardable instead. Also, and this news was on our radar last week, but I didn't mention it, that the government of Estonia, that we've spoken of from time to time through the years, because they're on the leading edge of deploying state-of-the-art identity for their citizenry. Unfortunately, they're using an identity system based on the Infineon library, and 750,000 electronic IDs it has issued, that is, the government of Estonia has issued, are vulnerable. 750,000. And researchers have uncovered evidence that the ID cards issued also by Slovakia and Spain may also be vulnerable. So essentially, we have this widespread, deep, broad, and old vulnerability. And hopefully this will come to the attention of those organizations who are using these products. To be responsible, Gemalto should be sending a notice. Unfortunately, if they work through reps, they don't know who all their customers are. There's a layer of insulation between them. So for example, unlike, I was going to use Yubico as a direct seller. I know that they know many of their end users. I don't know, though, if they run through a second tier of distribution because you can buy them off Amazon. So they don't know who all their customers are.
But that might be fulfilled by Yubico just because you buy it off Amazon.
Good point.
My sense is they do. I don't know. They know everybody, but that may not be correct.
So of course, what we would hope is that any supplier, directly or indirectly, of technology that uses these soft public keys would take responsibility for that and say, we profited from your trust, which, whoops, we didn't know, we didn't deserve, so let's fix that. Let's hope that happens. The real threat isn't broad because, unlike something like Heartbleed, where a huge number of servers on the internet were theoretically had a low probability of being attacked, but when it happened, the server could lose its private key, and then it could compromise it a lot. Here, each individual card would have had a different public key. Each one could have, for on the order of $10,000 or so, have that public key cracked to determine the private key, which would then allow that card to be impersonated. So this suggests a huge vulnerability for targeted attacks, not broad and sweeping, but, for example, you could imagine any state actor who knows that a target is using indirectly or directly this Infineon library could be rubbing their hands together because for the first time, if they can capture the public key, which the card readily gives you. So you just, that's
the point of the card.
Yes, exactly. It's like, here's my public key. And so that's distributed. So you just capture that, you crack it down, and you can then impersonate the person, because the idea is that it offers the public key, and then it responds to a challenge which can only be answered by the private key. So, and that stays in the card. So the idea is, if you get the public key, which it broadcasts for all intents and purposes, and crack it in order to extract the private key, Now you can impersonate the cardholder for anything that they use the card for. And that was the other thing too. In some of the research I was doing for this, they're like one of their customers, it was on the Gemalto site. It was one of their success stories. Some random wind farm company somewhere had equipped all 4,000 of their employees, and they were so proud, and they're emitting press releases because this one card does it all. And I'm thinking, it sure does. Now you only have to crack the public key once and for a given card, and you can do everything.
Is it the same public key on all the cards?
No, different public key.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's why it has to be targeted.
Right.
You'd have to decide, okay, we want to get Willard.
Right.
We're going to go, we want to be able to do what Willard can do, pretend to be him.
So you need Willard's card.
Yes.
But having gotten his card, you get his public key, you defactor it, his private key, give him the card back.
Exactly like any of the spy movies where you get Willard a little tipsy and then you slip the card out of his wallet, run it through your reader, put it back in, and he still has his card, but you've got what you need. And then you send that up to a cracking farm, and in a short time you've got the ability to, without copying the card, because that's the whole point.
Right.
The physical card is meant to be your security. And so the idea is there's only one of those that has Willard in it, essentially. And as long as he physically is in possession, it's the physical possession that is his security. This breaks that by being able to leverage something the card freely gives out, the public key, being able to leverage that into something it deliberately never gives out, which is the private key. And notice this is exactly the same model with the trusted platform model 1.2, which many people have. I don't remember, it was 11 out of 41 laptops or something that we talked about last week. So not all, but many have exactly the same vulnerability. The TPM will say, here's my public key, woohoo! And anybody who asks for it can get it. The idea being that it'll never give up the private key. Well, now you don't need it to.
That's why you need two-factor.